All right, so today I'm going to tell you guys why purchasing a diesel van for your mobile base camp is the best and most sound investment you can do, and why you should avoid going gasoline for this particular investment. And I'm not even going to talk about electric because it's a no-brainer why we don't go electric for this particular scenario. So let's get right into the video. So we got some big major advantages, and one that you might already be aware of, most people are aware of it, is that diesel is generally more fuel efficient. And it's not just generally, it just is. It's at least 13% more fuel efficient than gasoline. And you might be like, oh yeah, but diesel is a little bit more expensive, or depending on you are and depending when we are, it might actually be about the same as gas, or even sometimes less, like it has been in the past, which then it was just like even more of a no-brainer, right? It costs less and it's more fuel efficient. Like, why wouldn't you use this stuff? So anyway, so that's the big major advantage that most people are already aware of. But did you know that the diesel engine actually, it produces, or actually it works under higher compression ratios, which is one of the reasons that makes it more efficient. And that compression ratio is at least 18:1 compared to like maybe somewhere about 8 or 10:1 in gasoline engines. It's almost double, and that makes the fuel or the engine itself 50% more fuel efficient and power efficient than, especially when you're hauling heavy things, which is what we're doing with our mobile base camp. So it's making it 50% more efficient than gasoline engine. And also another important thing to keep in mind in regards to that too is because they're built to work under such high compression ratios, the engines themselves are built like tanks. They're designed to outlast any gasoline engine. And most diesel engines usually get, past the 500,000 kilometer reading. And most of the time, especially those big diesel rigs that you see on the roads that are responsible for, delivering all your goods, like your groceries and your food and your clothes and stuff, well, they usually outlast even 1,000,000 kilometers sometimes. So it's a very good investment if you're looking for a vehicle that's gonna last you at least 20 to 30 years. Obviously, if you take care of it. If you don't take care of it, it might last you less. So make sure to stick around for the tips I'm going to be giving you a bit later on. But that's basically it. So if you can do that, then your vehicle is going to outlast. Well, I would say the engine's going to outlast the vehicle, because rust is probably going to be your biggest issue. And don't worry, we have a video telling you exactly how to deal with that rust long term, because it will come up no matter what you do. So that being said, another advantage in regards to longevity that most people don't know about diesel vans is that the whole drivetrain itself, like if you're worried about your transmission giving out, well, it's a lot less likely on a diesel, especially if you're driving it properly, which I'm going to talk about in just a little bit, is that the drivetrain is gonna last longer too, because of this particular reason. And that's because diesels produce high torque at low RPM. So because they do that, which gasolines don't do, it's the reason why gasoline-powered vehicles have more horsepower but don't produce as much torque, which is necessary for hauling big, heavy things like your mobile base camp. So basically, once you get that up and running and you realize that, well, your transmission is going to last longer, the only caveat to this is that your torque converter is going to have more abuse and it might die prematurely, which happened to me actually, and I'll make a video talking about that experience as well. I'll leave a link to it. But it's actually something you can avoid entirely if you're driving your diesel van properly. And like I said, stick around, I'll tell you exactly what to do for that. But just to finish off on this point, so since the engine lasts longer and the drivetrain lasts longer, they're built to last, well, that makes the resale value on your diesel van much higher than a gasoline van, because people generally have a perceived value that diesels are going to last longer, that they're built tougher, and so on and so forth. But obviously, if it wasn't well taken care of, it might as well be a lemon. So when you're purchasing, make sure to know exactly what to look for. I'll actually make a video telling you basically about all the mistakes that I did, so you don't have to. But let's say you get a good deal on a diesel, and especially since you're going to take care of it, when you're going to resell it, you're going to know exactly what to say. You're going to tell people things, you're going to educate them because of this video on all the advantages they don't yet know about. So resale value guaranteed to be a little bit higher, maybe a lot higher if you play your cards right. So other than that, other than the resale value, the engine longevity, the transmission's longevity, the fuel efficiency, well, you also have the fact that, well, you can actually use alternative fuels to power it, which in like emergency situations or even if you're short on cash, can really help you a lot. Or if you just want to save money instead of wasting it and actually do something good for the planet, you can actually use biofuels like biodiesel or straight vegetable oil. Like literally get vegetable oil from the grocery store, which wouldn't be too cost efficient when you think about it. Like corn oil, peanut oil, you can actually power your van with that. And if I'm not mistaken, Ford has put out a paper or statement saying that they approve and that it does in fact work in their transit line vehicles. You just got to make sure that the weather is warm enough and that, you know, it's filtered properly. And honestly, most people usually end up getting a dual tank. So one tank is just pure diesel to warm up the engine, like in the winter and stuff. And then the second tank is straight vegetable oil. So you don't have any coagulation problems, which could be very serious. So make sure you know what you're doing if you're going into that realm. But like I said, more expensive to buy vegetable oil. But if you grow it yourself, or if you just go to a restaurant that you really like and you get rid of their used cooking oil, which you'll obviously need to filter properly and very well at that. If you could pull that off, then you might actually be powering your diesel for free. And actually the original inventor of the diesel engine, Rudolf Diesel, his goal was actually to power it with peanut oil and that we can grow our own fuel, like on farms and stuff. It's still a reality, but the powers that be don't seem to want to be promoting this, especially considering, and this is the weirdest part, it's actually the most environmentally friendly fuel. I have a blog post about this. It gives you the actual values of how much or how little this pollutes. But so you be the judge of that and let me know why we're not using this and why people are not talking about it more. But anyways, I'm not gonna say too much or I might be the next one on their hit list. So all jokes aside, moving on to the disadvantages. So you might know that diesel vans break down less often. That's another advantage, obviously, if you're doing the right things. But when they do break down, they're known to be more expensive to repair or to work on, and that's often because of the labor. Certain components that are in a diesel van that aren't in gasoline vans, such as, you know, the whole emission system, which you may or may not have depending on the year of your vehicle or if you opted to remove it, which I'm not gonna talk too much about. You're responsible enough to make your own decisions, but you know, that could be a big disadvantage. So it breaks less frequently, but when it does break, repairs are usually in the thousands. Like you're never gonna go to the garage for less than $1,000. But that's the truth for pretty much all vans, even gasoline or electric ones, because, you know, especially the transits, because of the way they're built, it takes so much time just to change a glow plug, which you might want to learn how to do yourself, by the way, because a lot of mechanics don't even want to do it, no matter how much you pay them. So there's those things to keep in mind, right? And like we said, the availability of the labor itself. If a lot of garages are turning down transit owners because of the glow plugs that are so difficult to access, like I said, it's not the end of the world, but you might want to start learning how to do some of that stuff yourself, which is the whole point of this channel. So make sure to check out the videos we post specifically on the Ford Transit line, but also just general mechanical advice or tips that might save you a couple $1,000 a year if you play your cards right. So anyways, moving on, that's a very obviously important thing to keep in mind. And we talked about the emission system already, so we don't need to go over that. But another disadvantage, like we said, is the torque converter going out prematurely. And it's also one of the reasons that transits need more, or sorry, diesel vans need more maintenance. And that's usually the low RPM driving stuff. So when you're city driving, stop and go, you're not going long distances, you're not rolling at high enough RPMs. Well, the torque converter gets abused a little bit more, but also soot builds up in your turbo vanes and sometimes inside your injectors, your EGR, intake manifold. If you have the emission system, you have your DPF, and we don't want that to happen. So the solution, and this is the first tip I'm going to give you to extend dramatically the lifespan of your diesel and all its components, is drive at high RPMs, between 2,000 to 3,000 on the highway, and if you can in the city as well, just doing things like engine braking. But obviously all that stuff is only possible if you have manual mode, or your transmission is actually a manual. But ideally you have at least a manual mode, like my Transit does, and a lot of the Sprinters have it as well. So basically you want to be controlling when you're going to be shifting. And because you have the ability to do that, you're going to be able to drive at higher RPMs. And that means you're going to be driving on lower gears. Like instead of being on 6th gear in the highway, because I know you guys want to save on gas, but honestly, it probably doesn't give you that much savings. Probably even worse because you're not burning the fuel properly. But if you're like on 5th gear on the highway when you're going 100, that is going to be so much better, especially if you're driving hundreds of kilometers. And you'll clean up your exhaust system or your turbo and all that stuff at the same time, because one, you're not allowing soot to build up and deposit itself. And if you're doing that, even if there is a little bit of soot, the high temperatures are burning everything off. So very good thing to do in the long run. Drive at high RPMs and try to limit the stop and go driving, because that's your torque converter anyways. There's not much you can do to overcome that, but just, accelerate slowly, don't floor it, and also just, try to get the RPMs higher in the city driving mode. So that's pretty much all there is to it. And like I did mention engine braking, that's when you downshift just a little bit before your needle goes back down to 1,000 RPM. It'll give it a little like rev sound, and basically that's the resistance of the engine making the RPMs go up. So it's basically using your engine to brake a little. That'll extend a little bit the lifespan of your brakes in the long run, but it's also good for the engine because it just clears out soot even better, apparently. So that's pretty much the tips I wanted to give you. And lastly, this is the only other disadvantage I could think of, is the smell. So if you're not a fan of diesel, because you either love it or hate it, I personally love it. I think it smells really good, especially in the morning. Especially if it's good fuel. It has a little bit of a sweet morning breakfasty kind of smell. I don't know how to describe it, but you either love it or hate it. Most people I know hate the smell. But for me, I feel the same way about gasoline. So I could understand, because it makes me nauseous, just the smell of it. So I could understand how people might feel around diesels. And whether it's deleted or not, it's still gonna smell a little bit. So just something to keep in mind. But if you like that kind of smell, then you're good to go. Super manly smell. Don't be ashamed of it. But yeah, be mindful of people driving behind you. So anyways, those are pretty much all the advantages and disadvantages I could think of when it comes to owning a diesel van, while considering using that as the foundation to build your mobile base camp. And if you can think of any other ones, please let us know. But that's why I'm telling you that purchasing a diesel van is a great investment that should last you at least 20 to 30 years, even if you buy it used.
All right, guys, that's it for this one. If you're building something that's meant to last, whether it's a camper van, a business, or just a better way of living, I'm glad you're here. Everything I use, recommend, or offer is linked in the description. Take what works, build your own blueprint, and I'll see you in the next one.